It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
What are some common traits amongst FIRE participants? What are some things that they do? Here's one that I thought was sort of across the board. They tend to be successful, high-income earners who are analytical by nature. I'm gonna paraphrase this. They're already spreadsheet people. Is that true?
I think so. Yep. Some of the spreadsheets that I've seen from clients, they're kind of involved. Probably a little deeper than what's actually necessary. But if that's what kind of gets them going and that's what they enjoy doing and it was what keeps them motivated and on track, then I can't really fault them for it. So.
But what's interesting, it's not folks that are, when I think about financial independence, retire early, I'm thinking about the folks who just kind of want to be flighty and go float around and like hang out in like the grass. These are like smart, analytical, high skilled folks who generally participate in this movement.
Yeah, and from a bunch of different professions. So software engineers, pharmacists.
Yeah.
The thing, like in the tech business, there's a lot of people
Startup folks, consultants. They are generally committed, when you think about folks who do the financial independence retirement movement, they're generally committed to saving 50% or more of their income. Now, I think we have to just pause on that for a second. These folks save 50%. Now, if you've listened to us for any number of times, you know that we tell you, if you want to be on track for financial independence, your goal should be to save 15 to 20% of your gross income. That's the money guy prescription. That will lead you to success if you start early. If you start later, you have to make it up. These FIRE folks come out of the gate shooting for a 50% savings rate.
Yeah, and so that requires a lot of sacrifice. Either a really high income, where that saving 50% still allows you to have the luxury that you're looking for, or you have to make sacrifices somewhere.
Yep.
And so there are a number of different ways to do that, whether that's subscription services, the amount of times you wash your clothes.
Oh, we'll talk about that one in a second, but tell me, is that like turn it inside out and wear it again? And so then it's
But the practice here is that by forcing yourself to save such a large percentage of your income, it kind of requires you to live on less.
Okay.
And really kind of figure out what life looks like on the bare essentials.
Okay, so, and that's another thing I think we're going to talk about is a lot of the FIRE movement is not getting caught in excesses. Just staying down to the bare necessity of what you need.
That's right.
Another common trait of FIRE folks, and we got lost for like an hour going through this one.
Sure.
They prefer to do it yourself for anything and everything you can. Because one of the things they want to do is they want to keep costs as low as possible, living expenses as low as possible. So as such, they choose to do DIY anything and everything they can. Now, I don't know that you would call yourself a FIRE person necessarily. However, this describes you, in my opinion.
Yeah, to all of our clients out there, we're not planning on going anywhere. I think I can speak for both of us. There's no intention to retire early. But I'm not going to pay the air conditioner guy like $1,500 to replace a little motor thingy that I can buy on Amazon for $90. And I learned how to replace it in like 15 minutes on YouTube, so...
Now, so I'm going to look at more because so that terrifies me. So I think about my air conditioner, right? Because I don't know if you guys have been there before, but middle of the summer, we live down here in the South. It gets hot. Your AC goes out and you're like sweating and you got your wife sweating. Your kids are crying and screaming at you and all that stuff's going on. I don't know that I'm willing to risk taking apart that thing or replacing that motor. That scares me, but you say you feel perfectly comfortable going in and doing that and making that repair, no problem.
Well, with a disclaimer, so it was a Saturday, like 2 Saturdays ago, and the AC just blew out. So there was a way I knew, I was like, okay, there's maybe a few checks that I can do without pulling open the guts of this system. Sure. And I'm not an electrician, electrical engineer by any stretch. So I wasn't about to touch any wires or do anything like that. I couldn't diagnose it. And my family had to get out of the house because it was getting up to like the mid 80s really fast.
Right.
And so I did. I paid the convenience charge, the extra surcharge to come out on a Saturday.
Okay.
And it was a little switch. You know, in hindsight's 20/20. If I knew it was a switch, I probably would have replaced it.
Yeah, okay.
But I didn't have the expertise to go testing the electrical circuits. You know,
and it's one thing that's really interesting is I think about like folks who do the FIRE movement and they start really early, right? So these folks that are in their 20s and 30s that say, I want to exit early, they create some behaviors early on. I'll use DIY as an example. I'm gonna kind of self-profess. I used to always do all of my yard work. I have a fantastic neighbor. He and I would make a Saturday of it. We'd go get some mulch. We'd spread it ourselves. We'd load up his pickup truck. We'd do that. And it was kind of fun. But now that I've got kids and the weekend time is so valuable, it's really hard for me to justify going and doing all that where I can actually just have some guy show up a mulch and spread it, and I can save the years of my life. Does that completely disqualify me from being a fire person because of that?
No, I think it actually ties back in nicely to one of the key parts of being in the fire movement, or at least controlling your money, is that you have to identify what your time's worth and what you should spend your time on. So it might have actually made sense for you, if it wasn't cost prohibitive, to go out, hire that person to come in and do that thing,
right? So
that you don't have to spend your time doing it, because your time's more valuable doing other things,
and
or spending it with your family.
And here's what's really interesting. I think, when I was in my 20s, my time wasn't more valuable than that,
Right.
and now my time is more valuable than that. It's interesting. Again, and we'll kind of talk about this a little bit in a second. When you think about these folks who are retiring for like 50 and 60 years, not the time value of money, but the money value of time, I just made that up, changes over time, right? Like, so it changes so if you make a plan that works when you're 30 years old, there's some pitfalls you have to make sure that you don't fall into when you're 50 years old, right?
Right. Inflation's the easiest thing to throw out there, is you don't know what life's going to look like at 50, but you also don't know what you want your lifestyle to look like at 50, because there's a lot of life that will happen from the time you're 32 until you're 52.
Sure.
So figuring out how to adjust accordingly as you go through that time period, maybe it does mean going back to work, or maybe you don't do as many trips so that you can have the life you want to later down the road, depending on what your spending does to your overall savings accounts.
And you would also put this, and you've said this a few times, fire folks, they only buy necessities. Your money or your life, Vicky's book talks about a lower cost of lifestyle that requires less maintenance. And one of the beautiful side effects of doing that is it does allow you to avoid lifestyle creep.
Yes.
And I think you even said you have some clients, so you say, do this to a T, do this perfectly.
There are clients that have like specific rules on their thermostat, and they'll say, you have to fall into all of these things before you can adjust the heat setting in the winter. So like, do you have a sweater on? Have you put socks on? Do you have a sweatshirt, a blanket, whatever? If you answered yes, do you pay the bills in the household? That's a big one.
Oh man, I just imagine I would never say that to my wife, but I just imagine one day looking at my little girls and telling them that, and they're just like, "Daddy, no, you better go turn that AC down."
There's something about having kids, in my opinion. We don't pay as much attention to the thermostats anymore. I used to freak out about it. I used to play a game to see how cold we could get it in the winter and how hot we could survive in the summer.
Just to keep the electric bill down.
Yeah. Now it's like, if it's an extra $15,
not a big deal.
That's okay.
So here's something I want to talk about for a second, because I did not know this. So I think one of the things that I was trying to figure out as I was going through this is, all right, who is fire? Who is not fire? What is it? How do I fall into it? There are actually different strains of the fire movement, right?
That's right.
And I think we had distilled them down to 4, right? So the very first one is regular fire. Who are the regular fire folks?
Yeah, I think that, again, if you drop the RE, the retire early part off of it, it's who are the financially independent, like motivated type of people. Those are the people that are willing to still have some of the creature comfort today, right? Still go out to eat, have a regular lifestyle, but are very committed savers and don't really buy into like a fluffy or frothy lifestyle.
Okay.
Right. So that's someone who might, I would say, fall into the regular fire camp. So
they're not like pinching every single penny.
No.
But they are extreme savers. They're probably going to have that higher savings rate, but they're not going to be the folks who are trying to like make their own home soap.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
They might actually still go out to eat once a month.
Okay.
Or twice a year.
So that's regular fire. The second strand of fire that we uncovered were the barista fires.
Yeah. So these are the people that are probably looking at burnout in their career.
Okay.
They have a high stress job. With that might come a high reward system. But they're not in that grind. They don't want to be a part of that lifestyle for a very long time. And so they're willing to maybe slow down what their working life looks like and have kind of a semi-retirement.
Yeah, this one is one I thought was really interesting, because I did not realize this was part of the fire movement, because we have a lot of clients who are very high earning, been very successful, and maybe they're working towards one big project or one big payout, and they've actually done this very thing. We have a client just recently who stepped away from a very lucrative job that he was incredibly successful at. Yeah. And he said, hey, I went and did 2 things because of where he lives. Said, I went to see if I could be a lifeguard on the beach because I thought that sounded awesome. And he goes, and I've been driving Uber. And he said, what's so funny is I'm driving Uber and I've got to get past like the social aspect of it,
Right.
but it's so fun. It's just I get to meet people and do it. And I don't think he would know that he's a member of the Barista Fire movement, but that perfectly describes kind of where he is right now.
Right. And we do, like I mentioned the pharmacist thing earlier, there are clients that we work with who say, hey, I'm going to do full-time right now. I don't have kids. I'm young early on. I'm going to just knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
And then down the road, I'm going to go part-time.
Sure.
And I'm going to define my schedule. And the intention there is I'll work for my living expenses,
Right.
whatever they are at the time. And then when I'm ready to fully step away, I've got all of these resources available to me that have been working for me since I was in my late 20s.
So it's not
30s.
like a Barista Fire thing for all of financial independence, just for like the first stage. So it's like almost like a staged deal they're working into.
That's right. Yep. And they're slowly transitioning into retirement to really test the waters before they get there.
Now, this next one, this is the one that I think of when I think of fire. And you, I think, aptly called it frugal fire. Who are the frugal fire folks?
These are the guys that fall into the camp of potentially only running their dishwasher once a month or washing their bath towels every other week.
Okay.
And seeing how far they can stretch it to save the energy cost associated with running the washer and dryer.
Okay.
The water bill that comes with running the washing machine or the dishwasher. You know, they're willing to do the things to really batten down the hatches. To create as much as possible.
So these are like I'm gonna throw some tiny home folks, maybe some folks who like subscribe to like the minimalism movement, right? That kind of thing. Yep. And there, there's one that I'm thinking of, right? Who's kind of he was or maybe is or became the poster child for this type of fire person.
The one that did the foreword for the newly renovated and revised Your Money, Your Life version that I read that was published in 2018, Mr. Money Mustache. I think when he started his journey, he was a part of the frugal fire movement.
Okay.
And I think that he still probably abides by a lot of those practices. But I don't know that I would necessarily say that he's fully retired.
Right. Because this has now led into a whole different career opportunity, which is another thing that we're going to talk about that we think is maybe a better way to think about fire. I think Mr. Money Mustache has actually, in fact, done that thing without realizing that. And then here's the last one. I'll take this one, right? Because I think this one is the fun one that I did not know about until we were researching this. These are the fat fire folks. Did you know about fat fire? I had no idea this was a thing. So these are those folks who desire who save more and more quickly so they can have a higher standard of living in retirement than frugal fire. This is for entrepreneurs, high-income professionals that choose not to fully embrace frugality so that they can enjoy a higher standard of living in retirement. So these are the folks who don't want to pinch pennies, don't want to live on low incomes. They still may want to have high six-figure incomes in retirement, but in order to do that, they're going to save incredibly aggressively very early on.
Yeah, that is to each their own, I guess, is what I would say. That probably steps away from the Your Money, Your Life train of thought if you're like towing the line with the practices that they preach in that book. Yeah. Because they would say, would you really be willing to delay the retirement date by 2 years to have that extra spend?
Sure.
When you get there.
I think what's interesting, and we feel, because again, what we get to do for a day job is we are fee-only financial advisors. So we work with folks all over the country, helping them figure out how to get to, attain, and achieve financial independence, right? I think that you would say probably a number of the folks that you work with, a number of the folks you specialize are probably somewhere between the regular fire, fat fire folks, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a number of the folks that come to us on the Money Guy show that we've been talking to for the last decade are these fat fire people. They're the folks who say, you know what, I've had a great career, I've had a tremendous success, I'm just naturally a saver, I want to build up these assets, and I want to exit the workforce in my 40s, 50s, 60s. These aren't the folks that are trying to leave at 30, but they're the folks who do want to do something else later in life.
That's right.
Okay, so if that's who you are and that's kind of where you fall out, I think the question we have to have is fire a good thing or is fire a bad thing? And rather than trying to just answer that question, we wanted to list out some pros and some cons of the fire movement and the fire mentality and the fire thought process. So here's sort of the pros to start with. Ultimately, what the fire movement causes you to do is think about your time differently, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's associating that the thing that you do to make your money might not be the thing that defines you or brings you happiness. And so instead, you use your working life in exchange to buy you time credits for the future. And so that's really, it allows you to open up the lens a little bit,
Sure.
dig into the budget, see what works for you, what's required to actually sustain life on a comfortable level, and then really drill down into that budget and cut out all the waste. So
what I think is beautiful is I was on a flight to San Diego a couple weeks ago, and there's an Amazon Prime documentary. I can't remember the name of it, but it was about wealth and consumerism and that sort of thing. And it's really interesting to think about. I think a huge pro what the FIRE movement does is it does help fight off and combat some of that. And I think we can be plagued with that sort of in the society in which we live and the things that we see and the way that products are pushed. It does sort of focus you to focus on sound financial management. So pro number one to the FIRE, it calls you to think about money and time and the value of time a little bit differently. And I think you said this, rather than letting it be used to buy material possessions, it's seen as a way to buy time. Another thing I think is really interesting, a pro is, and you're the first one I heard say this, is it causes people to change the way they ask the question about how much should I be saving, right?
It does, because you really, we've always kind of backdoored into the savings requirement because you ask somebody their retirement age and what they want retirement to look like, and you can kind of, with some assumptions, figure out what it takes to get there from now until then. This method actually takes the alternate path of saying, this is how much I need to spend to be happy.
Sure.
This is how much is left over. And then we have to look at ways to really grow the nest egg as efficiently as possible moving forward without kind of betting the farm.
Yeah, and I think, and you said that the example was, because a lot of people ask us, hey, how much should I be saving? And we say, okay, well, if you save 15 to 20% of your gross income, you're going to set yourself up that by the time you get to retirement age, you'll probably be in a pretty good place.
Right.
The FIRE folks say, hey, this is my standard of living. This is the thing that I want to achieve. How much do I need to save to get there? And by the way, if I can't save that much, how much more do I need to earn to be able to do that?
That's right. So a lot of clients, they'll come to us and they might be in their mid-30s or late 20s, and they'll say, hey, for me, the thing that would bring me happiness is being able to go to the car rider line and pick up my kids.
Sure.
I want to be able to spend more time at home doing the things that I care about that bring me the value. So if I want to spend $50,000 a year when I turn 40, what do I need to do today to get there? And if I can't get there, under the assumptions that we have to live within, what changes do I need to make at 40 so that I can slow down and step away to be in the car rider line every day at 3:30?
Perfect.
And so I think that does kind of blend over maybe into the barista FIRE, where that you do create that side hustle, where that you have the consulting gig, or maybe you're still loosely tied to your employer and are able to come in on special projects, maybe during busy seasons throughout the year. If there's like, for us, maybe a quarterly reporting cycle.
Perfect.
Or tax season, or end of the year planning type of stuff. If you know the ins and the outs of that business, then yeah, maybe you can work out an arrangement so that you have some sort of passive or semi-passive, I use that term loosely,
right,
income stream.
So would you say that like sort of the culmination is the big pro to being a FIRE proponent is it causes you to approach money in a more, I'm going to say healthy, but in a way that's going to make you more successful from a financial standpoint? Agreed?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.